Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another Orion Tech Tips video. In today's video, we will be discussing the system requirements for the brand new Call of Duty Black Ops 7. So Activision Blizzard came out with the trailer, the specs, and more. Now, here's the trailer. The first thing that they discuss is you can preload this game early, which is good because the disk space requirements is pretty insane, as it always is, but we'll certainly get to that. The first thing they discuss is when the game will be releasing for your region. So some regions will release sooner than other regions. So if you are interested in that, then take a look at this map. And then if you scroll down, it does give you the official PC system requirements. I have that right here. Now, I will say I've played many hours of not only Black Ops 7, but Black Ops 6, as well as other Call of Duty games. And these don't seem quite right. Now, the first thing I notice is when I look at system requirements, I want them to be very specific. And what I mean by that is they should say, if you are playing this game at this resolution and you want this frame rate on average, and this frame rate for your 1% lows, or even your 0.1% lows, then this is the hardware that you need to achieve it. But it doesn't really say that. It just says minimum, recommended, and then competitive / 4K Ultra, which is a bit of a contradiction. We'll discuss that a little later. But first, it says minimum specifications needed to play Call of Duty Black Ops 7. Now, I took a look at these, and I'm going to say these are very low, so I'm guessing what they mean. First of all, I don't know how thoroughly they benchmark it, but I'm guessing what they mean by this is minimum to boot the game. Because I'm looking at these system requirements, and to be honest, even having a Windows web-based browser machine that just is on email and Facebook, this would be quite rough. So let's take a look at these. For the CPU, it says it wants an AMD Ryzen 5 1400, which is 4 cores, 8 threads. Like the original Zen 1 architecture came out back in 2017. Intel i5 6600, that is the Skylake. What is that? That's 4 cores, 4 threads, so no hyper-threading there. Slightly better single-core performance, but of course the Ryzen, usually, especially back then, had better multi-core performance. 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now, I'll just tell you right now, even for a basic Windows machine, I would not recommend this in 2025. Even back a couple of years ago, I wouldn't recommend 8 gigabytes. So for a gaming machine, I mean, even 2016, 2017, 8 gigabytes was the bare minimum for a gaming machine. So I'm not even sure how they came up with that. As I demonstrated before in my Black Ops 6 benchmark, I'm easily maxing out a 32 gigabyte RAM kit. I'm even going above like 32, 35 gigabytes even. And if you leave Call of Duty Warzone running in the background with nothing else, it will use like 52, 53 gigabytes of RAM. So it is a RAM-hungry game. So 8 gigabytes just doesn't seem to be cutting it. I would love to see like video, like recordings of them playing the games with these specifications so I can actually see what it looks like, because that just doesn't seem right. For the video card, it's the RX 470, the GTX 970, or the 1060, and the ARC A580, which actually is decent value. I think they even got their like drivers figured out. And then 8 gigabytes of VRAM. So, of course, for the 470, that is, what is that? That's 4 or 8 gigabytes of GDDR6 VRAM. For the 970, it's 3.5, though they claimed it was 4. And then for the 1060, it was either 6 gigabytes or 3 gigabytes. And it says 3 gigabytes, so I'm guessing it's 3 gigabytes of VRAM, all of which are GDDR5, not 6, not 7. These are older GPUs, with the exception of the A580. That is a slightly newer 12 gigabyte GPU, $250 MSRP. Decent value for that. So with the 1060, even the 6 gigabyte one, which I mean the CUDA cores are the same, I was watching Daniel Owens play Hogwarts Legacy, and he was playing at 1080p. Everything was cranked down to the lowest. He could barely hit 30 FPS, and that's a 2-year-old game. So again, that's why I think these are the specifications needed to boot the game. Not play the game, simply load into the game without the game crashing. And even, I mean, the CPU, the GPU, okay. I mean, I'm shocked that the game will even launch on 8 gigabytes of RAM, quite frankly. And then you can see SSD is required with at least 116 gigabytes. I actually pulled up the Black Ops 6, and you can see it's slightly higher system space required. Now, keep in mind, this is the space required at launch that you need. However, they want you to keep additional space free. So even, like, I think like a couple years ago, the newest Call of Duty with Warzone was 309 gigabytes, and they want you to have, like, free space. Of course, your SSD runs the fastest, especially write speeds, when it's 20% free, so you should probably do that if you can. Also, the game, like, as it gets updated, a couple months from now, will be larger than 116 gigabytes. So Call of Duty, they really need to work on their, like, storage compression, because this is pretty insane. And then you can see, I guess we'll get to this now, a TPM 2.0 and Secure Boot are required. I read through this. Of course, it does say you need the latest and greatest drivers, or the game will not launch. That's always been the case. So it's super easy to update your drivers. You just go to AMD or NVIDIA. I used to like the AMD software better because it was just one app versus NVIDIA it was two, but now NVIDIA just has one app, which I really like a lot. TPM2 and Secure Boot. This is interesting. So I understand why they did it. It's to prevent cheaters, which, okay, makes sense. But newer motherboards are not compatible with this. For example, even my brand new ASRock X870 what is this, like Wi-Fi Legacy Nova, complicated name, the ASRock X870E Nova, I'll just shorten it to that. I had some trouble enabling the Secure Boot in the BIOS. If you have a pre-built, hopefully, pre-built manufacturer's enabled Secure Boot by default, at least they should, but it is frustrating to find it because it doesn't say Secure Boot, so I had to, like, enable a bunch of things and then it worked. But this will differ from motherboard to motherboard, so just keep that in mind. I think, as far as I know, Battlefield 2042 was the first game that actually required TPM2 and Secure Boot. And then for the recommended, this is slightly better. It says at 60 FPS in most situations with all settings set to high. Looking at these specs, I'm guessing it's 1080p. I don't think it's 1440p, and it's definitely not 4K. So for the CPU, it is the Ryzen 5 1600X, which is slightly higher clock speeds than the 1600, though you can get there by overclocking the regular 1600. 6 cores, 12 threads, and then the i7 6700, which is 4 cores and 8 threads. So, okay, RAM, it's up to 12 gigabytes, which isn't much of a jump from 8 gigabytes. I'm still scratching my head as to how they got that. I think it should be 32 gigabytes across the board, or maybe like 16 minimum, 32. I mean, quite frankly, it can use more than 32, not 64. So it is surprising that they aren't recommending 32 gigabytes of RAM at least. And then the RX 6600 XT 3060 or the ARC B580, which is the same as the minimum. That's interesting. The B5 ARC B5, yeah. Oh no, sorry, B580, not A. Okay, a little bit difference. I guess I missed that. But yeah, so the 6600 XT, that's a decently powerful GPU. I have the 6650 XT, a couple percent faster. Not much difference that you will notice without running benchmarks or using a frame rate counter. I have that upstairs. And then the 3060. These are actually decent GPUs. I can vouch for them. At 1080p, though I know NVIDIA said they would, or sorry, AMD said they would stop supporting their older GPUs that aren't the 7000 or the 9000 series, which I find very frustrating, though they sort of kind of backtracked on that, blamed it on us. Not a great PR response. But other than their driver situation, yes, the 6600 XT is still a great card for 1080p gaming. Same thing with the 3060. It is interesting that the 3060 has 12 gigabytes of VRAM, but yet the 3060 Ti has 8. Then the 4060 and 4060 Ti default at 8. Same thing with the 5060, that also has 8 gigabytes of RAM. So NVIDIA, stop being stingy with the VRAM and give us more VRAM. I know they had, like, they came out with like a $500 RTX 4060 Ti, 16 gigabytes, which was insane. Crazy expensive, especially when 1 gigabyte of GDDR6 on AliExpress only costs $1. So 8 gigabytes is only $8. They also only gave us a 128-bit memory bus for $500, which is insane. So I don't recommend that. But the 3060, if you still have that card, I'm not recommending you like buy it new, but if you still have that card, then yeah, it's completely fine. For video RAM, 8 gigabytes. And actually, I would agree with this. I would say 8 gigabytes of it at 1080p. Maybe not at high, though you will certainly get a dip, you'll certainly max it out, but maybe low or medium 1080p, maybe even high, though I haven't tested that. Yeah, that's fine. And it's recommending Windows 11 as well as 116 gigabytes SSD space. Okay, some things are questionable, but ultimately, yes, I don't really have, I wish it was more specific with the resolution, but, you know, it's alright, we'll give this one a pass. For the contradiction in terms, the one that I find most frustrating is the competitive slash 4K Ultra. Says competitive specs to run at a high FPS for use with a high refresh monitor, and Ultra specs to run the game at high FPS in 4K. Oh boy, Activision Blizzard. Do you proofread your work? Because, ladies and gentlemen, these are not the same things. Your graphics card is responsible for the resolution, right? Your graphics card outputs the frame, but your CPU is responsible for the actual high FPS because the CPU is what prepares the frame for the GPU to output. Hence, that's why we call it the brain of the computer. So, as you can see, things get very dicey here. So it says competitive slash 4K Ultra, AMD Ryzen 5 5600S X, or the i7-10700K. Now, I would not recommend you buy these CPUs new. Obviously, the motherboards are old. They're not supported, the sockets. But anyway, if you still have them, and you do want to play, if you have not a high refresh rate monitor, but maybe like a medium refresh rate monitor, especially if you have, say, like a 4K, even 120 hertz TV, and you play with a controller, these CPUs will be absolutely fine. However, it then says competitive slash 4K Ultra. If you want to play competitive, say at above 240 FPS, I'd say. If you have like a 540 hertz monitor, these CPUs will not even come close. You need an X3D, preferably a Ryzen 7 9800X3D. That's what I'm rocking. That is the fastest gaming CPU. Yes, even faster than the Ryzen 9 9950X3D, because that's two CCDs, this is one CCD, no CCD switching, no latency. If you just game, you should be on the Ryzen 7 9800X3D. That is certainly the fastest. Though, not only is that not on there, no X3D CPUs are on here, which I find very, very strange since it says competitive, so I do really question, like, how thorough was the testing? How much do these people know about computer hardware? It's, yeah, very... I have a lot of questions, to say the least. And then 16 gigabytes of RAM. It will play with 16 gigabytes of RAM, but you certainly will benefit if you have at least 32. So I don't know why. Also, you shouldn't really jump from 8 to 12. You should really double. That's when you see the most FPS, is just when you double your hardware. So 8 to 16, 16 to 32, 32 to 64, 64 to 128. If you if you go from like 8 to 12, you will see an improvement, but then you'll have to upgrade very shortly. Unlike if you just double your system memory, double your VRAM, double your storage, it will go a lot smoother, and it will delay your upgrade for longer, which is, of course, what we all want. For the video card, again, it's interesting. So the RX 9070 XT at MSRP is terrific value. I am a big fan of this card. Not so much the AMD software support / customer service, but with that aside, the card itself, very powerful, 16 gigabytes of VRAM at 1440p and even 4K. Again, if you say play on a 4K TV with a controller, yeah, this is fine. But then we go down to the RTX 4080 or the RTX 5070. Now, typically, these are, say, like a current gen 70 card and a last gen 80 card will perform roughly the same. In most circumstances, the current gen 70 card will outperform the last gen 80 card. Unfortunately, that is not the case with NVIDIA's newest lineup. I mean, AMD are, I guess, screwing over their customer with their software, and then NVIDIA is screwing over their customer with their, I guess, both software and hardware, and also charging insane prices at the same time. So the 4080, which I was not a fan of at $1,200, that is insane, is on average about 25% faster than the RTX 5070. Not only that, but the RTX 5080 does not outperform the RTX 4090. I think that, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the only time I've seen a current gen 80 card not be faster than a last gen 90 card. I mean, even in some generations, the 70 card, the current gen 70 card, outperforms the last gen, like the best of the best. So that maybe that's the 80 Ti series, or the 80 Ti, or the 90. It outperforms that. However, NVIDIA is being lazy, or I guess lazy and or greedy, probably both, and charging insane prices for not very powerful hardware. But anyway, to the point, I mean, if in 4K, of course, if you are reasonable, not 4K ultra everything high FPS, But if you at 1440p, this will crush it. Any of these cards at 1440p, you will get a tremendous experience at 1440p. Of course, if you have the right CPU, you can even play competitively at high frame rates, but again, you need an X3D CPU to do that, preferably a 9800X3D, or any X3D CPU that is on 1 CCD. Okay. So, video memory, 16 gigabytes of RAM, or 4K lower detail. So 1440p, absolutely 2 thumbs up. 4K, yes, if you tamper your expectations. Okay, hopefully that covers the video cards. And then for the video memory, 16 gigabytes of VRAM, which at 1440p, maybe not extreme, maybe not ultra, or maybe ultra, possibly high or ultra. I'm not really sure which one. 16 gigabytes is fine. Not at extreme, though. I have a 24 gigabyte GPU, specifically the RX 7900 XTX, with 24 gigabytes of VRAM. Not that there's any other XTX card with less than that, but I am using over 20 gigabytes of VRAM, and I have also seen Crispy's video and some other creators' videos, and they replicated my results. They are also using more than 20 gigabytes of VRAM. So, I mean, for 4K Ultra, right? So it doesn't say 1440p, it says 4K Ultra. I haven't tested this, but I would not be surprised if it completely maxes out a 24 gigabyte GPU. So, I mean, I could see why. I mean, these are, I guess, this is a 9070 XT, 16 gigabyte, RTX 4080, 16 gigabyte, 5070, that is a 12 gigabyte GPU. So I see why. And again, even at 4K, though, you will have to lower your texture details. Though, I guess these cards might not be powerful to play 4K everything extreme, so you may have to, lower your details just from the beginning, even VRAM aside. Yes, you will be fine if you only have 16 gigabytes of VRAM. However, know that the game does support more, and you will certainly have to make some compromises, especially if you are playing at 4K. But even at 1440p, I do use more than 16 gigabytes of VRAM. Just keeping that in mind. 1440p Extreme, I'm using about 20 gigabytes of VRAM. And then Windows 11, of course. Oh, Windows 10, I meant to mention this, but as I'm sure most people, if not everyone, already knows this, Windows 10 is no longer supported, and you will have to pay 25 gigabytes per year if you want to continue using it. Or I think you can do that for like a year or two, maybe even longer. But then eventually Windows 10 will no longer be supported, even with, I guess, even if you are willing to pay. You will have to jump from Windows 11. If Windows 10 is not supported, I would not recommend you use Windows 10. If there are no security updates, you are vulnerable to a lot of different things. So, I mean, even if you think I don't want to spend, I mean, you can get like a really cheap $500 computer that runs Windows 11. But if you think I'm going to save $500, especially if you connect your computer to the internet, which, I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone does, and does banking on your computer, which a lot of people do, you should not be on Windows 10 because it just isn't safe, and if your bank account gets hacked, if your credit card gets hacked, well, then you are going to lose more than just a couple $100. So just FYI, once Windows 10 no longer has security updates, you should definitely be on Windows 11. And then SSD required, 116 gigabytes at launch. Okay, so normally, they would give us like more options, say 1440p, high 60 FPS, 1440p, maxed out 240 FPS, and give us like 5 or 6 or even more tiers. There's only 3 tiers. I mean, this is like the bare minimum. Quite sloppy, quite frankly. I wish they included more detail. I wish that they gave us more specifics, and I do wish that they showed us gameplay footage, actual video footage with these hardware configurations, because something doesn't seem right. I've played many hours of a bunch of different Call of Duties, including Black Ops 7, and it just doesn't seem right. SSD at launch, I mean, I imagine if you're buying a $70 game, you have plenty of SSD storage. As someone who got into PC gaming back in 2017, it does baffle me how cheap they've gotten. But if you are on a hard drive, you really can't play any games. Even games that do support it, like Cyberpunk, textures don't load in, so it's just a very rough experience. But most games, like Call of Duty, won't even launch without an SSD, which I do find interesting, but ultimately I do support it really the ideal / any gaming experience. You should have an SSD to pull up the Windows, I guess the PC system requirements, Black Ops 6 versus Black Ops 7. Mostly, yeah, I mean, a lot of these are the same. I played both. I wouldn't say there's much of a difference between Black Ops 6 and Black Ops 7 performance-wise, or even gameplay-wise. I am curious, what do you think of the system requirements? What do you think of the specs? Will you be buying it? Do you think it's worth $70? If not, what would make it worth $70, if anything? I'm curious. If you have a recommendation for a future video, make sure to drop that in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless.